Welcome back to the Barley Lads. If you've enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Today, we're drinking a bottle from my brother Ian. This is Suntory Toki. This is Suntory Toki. It is a Japanese whiskey out of the Yamazaki Distillery in Osaka, Japan. 43% or 86 proof with a non-age statement. Price-wise, you should be able to get this between $30 and $35. On the mash bill, it's a blend of Japanese single malt and grain whiskeys, all produced by Suntory Distilleries. So this is Suntory Toki. Because there are going to be a lot of Japanese words, I apologize. I'm going to be reading off of my notes a lot more this episode. But the name Suntory comes from two separate words, akadama, which means red ball and is a euphemism for sun, and the name Tori, which is actually from the founder's name, where his last name was Tori. So when they combined it, made it Suntory brands, and that's where the name of this comes from. So Suntory was started by Shinjiro Tori, and he opened a store in 1899 selling imported wines. He expanded the store throughout the early 1900s and then began working with a man named Masataka Taketsuru, and they wanted to develop a whiskey that was unique to Japan. So Masataka had traveled to Scotland in the early 1920s and started learning from the master distillers in Scotland and brought that knowledge back to Japan. And with Tori, they started producing Japanese whiskeys, and I believe it was the first distillery in Japan, or at least the first distillery that was open at that time. And when they built that, production began in 1924. 5 years later, they released their first whiskey, and it was called the Suntory Whiskey Shirofuda, or white label, and it was the first single malt available to the Japanese market from Japan. Production came to a halt during World War II. Supplies were limited to make stuff like that, and so they kind of had to shut down their production and shut down all their development and things like that. They were able to reopen in 1946, and under different brands, they started making beer. There's a Suntory beer, I believe, and it became a huge conglomerate. And also the Suntory whiskey line, which includes Hibiki Harmony, which is also a very popular Japanese whiskey, significantly more expensive as well. But they started buying up a lot of different distilleries and companies, and I believe there are 3 distilleries now under the Suntory brand. In 2014, Suntory bought the Beam brand, so Jim Beam, and they changed the name to the company to become Beam Suntory, and it is one of the largest producers of different liquors and liqueurs and spirits in the world. So this is the Toki, which is a blend, and it's going to have similar qualities to a Scotch, a very light Scotch flavor, because of the history where they learned how to distill and things like that from Scotland. So on the nose, to me, it just screams Scotch. Again, though, this is the first Japanese whiskey I've ever had, so they might have more varieties out there that have a unique flavor. Sorry, there's a bee in my face. We're shooting in the outdoors here. So it does have a honey floral note. Certainly gives it the malt, that Scotch malt nose. But you still get the grain whiskey, that sweet, almost overly sweet grain flavor. There is a mild alcohol astringency to it, just on the nose though. On the taste, pretty mild. You do get a little lemon and vanilla again. Slight honey flavor to it. I'm going to give it a short finish, maybe medium. But again, very sweet. Vanilla. A hint of oak. I'm not quite sure the age on this. It is a non-age statement whiskey. But I can't imagine it being very old. But you do get a little bit more proof on this than you would a lot of the scotches. Certainly a lot of the blends at 86 versus 80. So you do get a little bit more, I think, flavor from that. And it's a good quality whiskey that if you're trying to go into the Japanese, this is a good starting point just because of the price. You know, that Hibiki Harmony I was talking about, I think is anywhere from $75 to $100. This is a much better starting price. So you can get into some Japanese stuff. Thank you again for watching another episode of the Barley Lads. Today we've been talking about Suntory Toki. If you've enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Cheers.